hack into your VPN so they can see your traffic. And we know that, for instance, the NSA has long been hacking VPNs. We know that Edward Snowden revealed 10 years ago or 12 years ago now that the NSA has long been able to hack into Cisco VPNs, and that exploit was revealed by Edward Snowden. And it's basically an attack against SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. The North Koreans have been coming into the West, right, and posing as IT workers, right, and then basically stealing information. And so you have to be aware of the threat of somebody on the inside. And that's like the worst case threat, is that you hire a North Korean who comes to work for your company and then hacks your system, opens up back doors in your system. You can see now that I'm logged into the FortiGate through SSH. Now I have admin privileges on this VPN, right, that I can do anything with it now. I mean, I'm admin.
Hey everyone, it's David Bombal back with the amazing OTW. OTW, great to have you back on the show.
David, it's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the best YouTube channel for IT and cybersecurity, and I sincerely mean that.
Appreciate it, man, and thanks so much for coming on the channel and sharing your knowledge. I always like to say this, there's a lot of people who hoard knowledge and don't make it available, especially for people who are new. But I really want to thank you for, sharing your expertise on YouTube for free, sharing all of these tips and tricks with people who are watching the channel. But for those of you who don't know OTW, he's the author of this book, Linux Basics for Hackers. You also wrote this book, Network Basics for Hackers, one of my favorites because I like networking and then getting started becoming a master hacker. I want to thank DeleteMe for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel, but also protecting both me and my family. Data brokers are collecting huge amounts of data about us, including our location data, and selling that to all kinds of people, foreign governments, advertisers, and even hackers. Companies are able to buy very targeted information from data brokers. If you want to protect yourself and protect your family, you want to reclaim your privacy and make yourself more secure, then get your data removed from data broker websites. You can do that manually, lots of work. More power to you if you decide to do it that way. I personally use DeleteMe because they make the process very, very simple. You input some personal information. I mean, you have to for them to be able to get that information removed. Once they have some information about you, like your name, your address, telephone numbers, etc., they contact many data broker websites and get that information removed. I highly recommend DeleteMe. They have removed a lot of my data from the internet. You get reports every quarter showing what they found and what they've removed. You can join them using my link below, joindeleteme.com/Bombal and get 20% off. Again, use the code BOMBAL to get 20% off. Reclaim your privacy and improve your cybersecurity posture by removing both your data as well as the data of your family members from the internet. Again, joindeleteme.com/Bombal to get 20% off. We are talking today, right, about a second video about the VPN video we did previously. So I'll link that below for anyone who's interested. We had a lot of interesting comments and pushback on that video and a lot of misunderstanding, I think. But I know VPNs are one of those topics that make you really angry, if you like, because people are paying good money to buy devices that are supposed to protect them. And as you said in that video, and hopefully you're going to demonstrate today, these devices are not doing perhaps what they should be doing.
Yeah, it does trigger me. It triggers me because these are cybersecurity companies. These are companies who are in the business of protecting people's data and identities. The Ciscos, the Fortinets, the Palo Alto, and these are companies that pride themselves on knowing the best technologies, the best techniques, the best procedures and protocols to keep you safe, and yet they are not implementing them into their devices to keep you safe. And that's what bothers me. If it was any other developer who had the kinds of problems that we see in these devices, it might be forgivable, but it's certainly not forgivable. And it really triggers me when I see these companies who sell cybersecurity and they are not implementing basic cybersecurity practices into their own devices, and they are exposing all of your viewers and all of the enterprises around the world to being hacked. So, and hack, one of the things we have VPNs for is to keep our data confidential, keep our identities confidential. And yet some of the developers, okay, are so lax in their cybersecurity measures that it's pretty easy to hack into these devices. Now, be careful about what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is hack into the device, right? I'm not talking about hacking the tunnel, okay? There's a tunnel between the client and the device, and that tunnel is encrypted. And unless that encryption algorithm is flawed, which generally they're not, the encryption algorithms that we use are tried and true. And so as long as that encryption algorithm is not flawed, then the tunnel is basically unhackable. And I think that's where some of the confusion lied with the comments that we were getting, is that people are saying, well, there's no way that you could go ahead and break the password that's being sent over the tunnel without spending, days, weeks, years, decades, centuries to hack the password. No, I don't have to hack the password. I don't have to crack the password, because in some cases, the password is sitting in plain text on the device, right? And today I will show you a way to bypass authentication on, in this case, a Fortinet device. I have a Fortinet device here set up, and we can bypass authentication and log in as admin on this device. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about trying to hack the tunnel. Let's be clear on that. You're not going to hack the tunnel between the client and the system, but you don't have to. You can just get into the device, and then the device is going to decrypt the traffic, right? So it's encrypted at the client, it's decrypted at the device. And once it's decrypted, then you can see all the traffic. And in most cases, these devices have TCPDump on them, so you can analyze the traffic by using TCPDump and select the traffic you want to see. So those of you who aren't familiar with TCPDump, is a command line packet filtering system like Wireshark, but it's basically it's command line. So if you ever wondered why you should learn TCPDump, this is one of the reasons you should learn TCPDump. Is because once you're inside, say, a VPN or whatever the device happens to be, oftentimes you can just run TCPDump and then analyze the traffic from there. One other important point I want to make here is that most of these devices, not all of them, but most of these devices are running some version of Linux. Okay, they're running, whatever they're calling their OS, it's basically a Linux kernel, okay, with enhancements from that particular developer, which speaks volumes of why everybody needs to know Linux. If they're going to be in cybersecurity and you don't know Linux, you're not going to go very far. You can sit on a help desk someplace, and without knowing Linux. But if you really want to do any of the technical work, you really need to know Linux. And the more you know, the farther you're going to go. So it's not only these VPN devices, but it's the IoT devices, right? I mean, all these IoT devices are running Linux, right? And so that's why I wrote the book. Is that if you're going to run in cybersecurity, you need to know Linux. That's the first place you start. All right.
Sorry to interrupt you, OTW. I also wanted to make it clear, because there's a lot of misunderstanding in that video. You were specifically talking, and today we're specifically talking about enterprise type VPNs. So like Fortinet devices, right? We're not talking about the Proton VPNs of the world, or, pick your favorite poison, but like the VPNs that are consumer based, because a lot of people seem to have misunderstood that as well.
Yes, a lot of people misunderstood it. And in actuality, I was at different times speaking about the two different types. I was speaking. So there was some conflagration of the two types. So let's be clear: enterprise and then consumer level. What I was saying about the consumer level is that a lot of people use the consumer level VPNs to hide their identity. But what it does is it hides your IP. It doesn't necessarily hide your identity. So that's the point I wanted to make there. But a more important point is these enterprise level VPNs that every company in the world use this, right, to be able to allow their employees remote access and create a tunnel between the remote access client and the corporate network, that those devices that do that are flawed. And there are innumerable vulnerabilities that we've been tracking at Hackers Rise, and we have a web page that we just track all of the VPN router vulnerabilities for the public, and you can see that at our website. If your VPN is not keeping you safe and you don't know it, then your whole organization's at risk. And this is VPNs and routers have long been the target of the state actors, the Chinese, the Americans, the British, the Russians,
Everyone.
The nation state actors are always targeting these devices because it's a way for them to be able to know your secrets. Right? So you're communicating confidential information, which they want to know, and they will do what's necessary to be able to hack into your VPN so they can see your traffic. And we know that, for instance, the NSA has long been hacking VPNs. We know that Edward Snowden revealed 10 years ago or 12 years ago now that the NSA has long been able to hack into Cisco VPNs, and that exploit was revealed by Edward Snowden. And it's basically an attack against SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. Right, that's what it was. And SNMP is still a favorite vector to getting into these devices. It's still one of the favorite vectors of getting inside. But what we're going to do today is maybe more malicious, simply because it's a way of bypassing authentication on these devices. So it's a way to get inside the device, all right, and with admin privileges, without really going to much work at all. It's pretty simple on some of these devices. And that's one of the biggest problems that we've seen, is that authentication is a problem on these devices. They're not well secured. And all of these devices have a web server portal, where the admin can log in and configure the device, right? And they very often have SSH enabled, right? So you can log in, get a command line. And so in this case here, what we're going to talk about and demonstrate today is a way to be able to get inside of a Fortinet VPN by simply bypassing authentication and getting SSH admin access. This is about a 3-year-old exploit, but there's still a lot of systems that are vulnerable to it. So now these devices don't always get updated.
And I think it's also important for YouTube, right? I know this has happened on so many of the videos that we've done, like the previous video we did on camera hacking. I had to do a demo locally. And then a lot of the comments were like, oh, it's dumb, you're showing it locally. But it's because we can't show the stuff on YouTube that you can actually do. So just for all the haters out there, OTW can do a lot of stuff that I wish we could show, but we can't, because I want to keep my channel. So that you have to go to his website and look at what he's doing and register for his courses if you want to see some of the stuff that we can't show.
And today is going to be on local network as well. I realize that YouTube, we have to abide by their rules. So I put a Fortinet VPN on my local network. And
so I just have to ask you, have you given yourself permission to hack your own Fortinet?
I have, of course. Yes, I've given myself permission. So it's all legal. It's all legal because I gave myself permission. No legal issues here today.
Great. So I don't want to stop you with the demo. Go for it whenever you're ready.
So what I want to do first is to do a quick scan of my network to find the device, right? And so we're just going to do a quick Nmap scan. All right, so basically all I'm doing here is I'm just doing an ST scan, so that's scan TCP. TCP scan basically does a 3-way handshake to all the ports, and it's probably the most reliable scan. Some people complain that it's not stealthy, but the truth of the matter is that every packet you send has your IP address attached to it. Right. The only difference with many of the books out there, not mine, but many of the books out there tell you to do a SS scan. But it's not stealthy, folks. All it does is it doesn't log, the server doesn't log your IP address, but any device out there, the firewall, the IDS, is still going to see your IP address. All right? So let's go ahead and do our scan. Enough of that. Let's go ahead and do our quick scan. Let's find where our router VPN is at.
Now on the camera one, where I did this for the local camera, again, those wonderful comments about this is dumb because you're scanning your local network. How would you find these devices on the internet? Is it Shodan, or you just scan the internet? How would you find the actual devices out there?
For IP cameras, Shodan's probably the best for finding IP cameras if they are exposed to the internet. But in some cases, you might want to. So say that, let's say that you're working as a penetration tester for a company, and they've hired you to come in and test your security. Some of their cameras are not going to be exposed to the internet, right? But you still want to find them and be able to test them, because there's always a possibility of the internal threat. There's always a possibility. You have to keep, one of the things that, maybe this is something we should do a short on, David, is that the North Koreans have been coming into the West, right, and posing as IT workers, right, and then basically stealing information. And so you have to be aware of the threat of somebody on the inside. And that's like the worst case threat, is that you hire a North Korean who comes to work for your company and then hacks your system, opens up back doors in your system. And so, but sometimes you just have employees who aren't happy with their job. They're not happy with their life. They're not happy with the company, and they want to do damage. And you have to be, part of your job is to make sure they can't do damage to the company. If you're going to be a pen tester, that's part of your job, is to make sure that the internal threat, you're protected as much against the internal threat as the external threat. So if you're looking for IP cameras that are connected to the internet, I like Shodan for doing that. There's also other services that'll help you as well. But Shodan's good at finding cameras. And of course, then once you find the camera, then you have to find a way to get inside. But what we were doing and you were doing in our last IP camera video is important. Part of the whole process is to be able to find the cameras that are internal, an internal network, because those can be hacked by actors who are inside the company. Or think about the simple user who gets hacked. And so the attacker is now inside the network at a user level. What can they see? What can they find? And that's what we want to be able to do. So it's, I know that everybody out there in YouTube land wants to be a hacker and be able to hack all things on the internet. But I think that what we're trying to do here is to both show what one can do, say, as a cyber warrior, somebody who's been employed by their nation state to protect and defend their country, as well as what you can do as a penetration tester. So we want to look at both of those elements, right? Both of those professions. Yeah, you have to test the internal network. You have to test the external network. You have to test what it looks like from the outside and what it looks like from the inside. Here, we're testing what it looks like from the inside, and quite frankly, it's taking forever.
So the same for finding Fortinet devices or VPN devices, right? You're going to do a scan on the internet, or you're going to do Shodan? How are you going to find those?
What we're doing is that we're using Census and Shodan to find them. There's lots of great recon dorks that you can do to find them. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing in our upcoming class. But in this case here, what we want to focus on is when you find them, what can be done? Do you want to wait for the entire scan, or do you just want me to scan the IP address?
Yeah, we know how this works, so maybe you can just hit that specific IP address.
Okay,
because,
I'll just hit that.
We don't want to wait.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. All right, so the IP address I know from having done a previous scan, okay, is at 99. Let's go ahead and scan it and see what it looks like from Nmap perspective. There it is. And you can see there's SSH open on it, there's 113 open on it, and 443 open on it. You can see it identifies it as Fortinet right here. We could do a scan of the services that would give us even more information. But we know that this is a Fortinet device, right? And we know that SSH is open, and that's not unusual. And so let's go and test to see if we can log in to the SSH, right? I'm going to clear my screen so you can't see what I did previously. and I'm going to try to log in as admin on this device, right? And the SSH. And I'm going to put in my password and permission denied. I'll try it again. Okay. Permission denied. Okay. Permission denied.
So you're just putting some random password in, right?
Well, I'm putting in my password. Okay.
You mean like your user password?
Yeah, I'm using my password. I could try to guess the admin's password here and see what happens. Let me try. For instance, I can go ahead and just say, okay, connection reset.
When you say you're using your user account, you've got like an OTW user, right? So that's a different user or something to the admin account. Did I understand that right?
Well, I have multiple users on this system. Okay, I have admin, I have OTW, I have Kali. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is to log in as admin, okay, on the Fortinet device, right? So that's a separate account. Now,
versus a VPN account, yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is to get inside the SSH so that I can control the VPN. I could try to guess what the admin account is. The first thing I would try is admin, right? And see whether or not I can get in that way. And what happened is every time I tried, I couldn't get in. Using admin, guessing what the admin's account is, password account is, nothing works. I can't get in. Right? I could go ahead and try lots of different things to guess, and I could do some social engineering to try to get the password. But thanks to the good people at Fortinet, there's actually a way to bypass the authentication on these systems. Here's the full CVE, right? So it's an authentication bypass using an alternate path or channel in the Fortinet FortIOS version 7.2 through 7.21 and 7.0 through 7.0, the FortiProxy version 7.2. You can read all of those there. All right. So it allows an unauthenticated attacker to perform operations on the admin interface via specially crafted HTTP or HTTPS requests. All right. And basically what it does is it allows us to go ahead and put our own SSH keys into the device. All right. And so then we can log in. Okay. So that's it. And let me show you where the here it is here. I think there's actually a version of this exploit in Metasploit now. Right? So here it is. It's under Verizon is the folks who did this. There it is right there. And so you can go ahead, I'll go ahead and do a git clone on it. Okay, so I gave you the URL to go ahead and download the proof of concept. Right? And now what we're going to do is we're going to use that, okay, to be able to put our own SSH keys into the system. So here we're going to go. Here's going to go. And let's see. I'm going to get the right one here. There it is right there. Okay. So I'll expand it so you can see it better. So here it is. It's basically sudo in Python 3, the exploit. Okay. You can see that it's a Python script. And here I'm going to put a plug-in for my upcoming book on Python basics for hackers.
Yeah, when's that coming? Come on.
This fall. It's coming out this fall. We have a tentative date of September. But the important point here really is that if you're going to be successful in a career in cybersecurity, you need to know some Python. Almost all of these exploits are written in Python. Not all of them, but most of them are. And so to be able to be proficient, you need to know some Python. So that book is going to walk you through knowing nothing about programming in Python and to writing some useful cybersecurity scripts. Okay, so it's in Python. The target, that's the IP address. I'll keep on expanding this. Okay, the username we're looking for is admin, and then we need to identify where our SSH key is at. And in my case here, this is a hidden directory, right? So my home directory, SSH ID ED 255519 pub. And basically what this does is when I run it, it's going to put in my key into that VPN, and then I should be able to log in. Woohoo! SSH key for admin added successfully. All right. So now let's go ahead and see whether or not I can log in. Now I'm using my credentials, right? Because I've added my credentials to the VPN, but I've given the username admin my credentials from my SSH keyring. So let's try again. Aha! The first time I must have put my password in wrong, but you can see now that I'm logged into the FortiGate through SSH. Now I have admin privileges on this VPN, right? That I can do anything with it now. I mean, I'm admin, right? So I could upload, if I wanted to, I could upload malware to the system. I could shut the system down. I can reconfigure the devices. So I have almost unlimited things that I could do. I could do something as simple as putting a netcat listener into it and then connect it from another machine, right? And be able to control this entire device. So this is a demonstration of how easy it is to bypass authentication on some of these devices. Probably the worst one that I have seen is the one you and I talked about with the Viasat hack. The Russians hacked the Viasat system at the start of the Ukraine war. And what they did is it was a 4-year-old exploit. So this one here is 3 years old. Okay, it was a 4-year-old exploit, and they found a system in Italy that was using the Fortinet VPN. And in that case, the username and passwords were stored on the device in clear text. They simply had to use directory traversal to find the proper directory where it was stored in clear text. So what I'm saying is that these devices are not doing the really basic types of security measures that you would expect in any device. I mean, a directory traversal is like web app hacking 101, yet it worked in cyber warfare in 2022, right? And the Russians were then able to shut off the entire Viasat internet service to Ukraine and other parts of Europe in February of 2022. They timed it so that as the invasion was taking place, they shut off the internet, which is, that's a tactic that most cyber war strategists would use. One thing you want to do if you're about to invade another country is you want to cut off all of their communication medium. And so there's often a DDoS attack will take place. Russians have done this many times, and then shut off the internet access. And so it throws confusion and the lack of proper information into the target. And so this is what the Russians did. And we returned the favor and DDoSed Russia in 2022 with the largest DDoS attack they have ever seen. That's their words. Okay, that's their word. They said it was the largest DDoS attack they've ever seen. And so
I got to play. I know these. We'll get these comments right. You were logging in as admin, but the password you were using was like the Kali password. It wasn't the admin password. Is that correct?
It was the password for my admin account. Okay, on the Kali, right? So what I did is I injected my admin hash into the Fortinet device, okay, through port 443.
So basically, even though you don't know the password of the Fortinet admin account, you're basically admin because the hash was changed.
It was my hash. Yeah. So I know what the password is. I know my own password is. So I basically I didn't inject the password. I injected the hash of the password, and then I can go ahead and log in. So the other thing that's important about this is that the real admin on the account no longer can get in. Their password has changed to my password.
I know comments we'll get is like, okay, so this is an old hack, so it's not really relevant. I mean, we've already said one of the reasons we're showing old stuff is because it's patched, and we have to be careful on YouTube. But you also mentioned the Viasat one, right? So even though they are old hacks, it doesn't mean they're patched. So that's another thing. And also, Fortinet has a lot of new CVEs, right?
Yes, here on the screen, I've put up the list of the CVEs for Fortinet. And you can see that, here we have, this one is just a few weeks ago, right? The stack-based overflow vulnerability. And notice the max It's a 9.8. That's about as serious as you can get, right? And then here's another. We talked about previously the path traversal that the Russians used in Ukraine. This is another path traversal. Once again, that's web app hacking 101, right? And a security company, a cybersecurity company, has a web server that allows you to do directory traversal. That should be guilty of negligence or malpractice is probably a better way to put it. That they have a web server you can do path traversal on. Here's another one. These are both known exploited. You can see these are 2025s. These are months, weeks and months ago, right? So I mean, we could pick on other people besides Fortinet, but Fortinet probably is the worst. So I know I'm going to get hate mail from Fortinet, but that's okay. I mean,
yeah, I mean, some of the comments were like, it's not fair to pick on Fortinet because it happens to other vendors as well. But what I'm seeing from you and lots of other people who, even support firewalls and the like Tom Lawrence, he's always posting these memes about Fortinet. It seems to be happening so often with Fortinet.
Fortinet is guilty of cybersecurity malpractice. In
your opinion,
in my opinion, yeah. And it's the only opinion. Yeah. It's the only opinion I can give is my own opinion. Right?
I love it. I love it.
So yes, I love when people say, "In my opinion." Well, I don't want you to give somebody else's opinion. I only want your opinion. But you can see all these 9.8s in here. There's some others that are just low, 2.3, but there's just so many in these devices. And I just demonstrated, how easy, well, it's not, if you have the exploit, it's easy. But developing the exploit is a lot of work. And that's one of the things I always want to emphasize in these videos is that, to be able to, it's one thing to be able to use somebody else's tools, right? And that's what we did in this demonstration. We used a tool that Horizon had developed and others have developed. But to develop a tool, right, that's a whole other thing. That's something that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. So, you might say, well, that's an old exploit, well, develop your own. and that means a lot of work. You're not going to see it necessarily in a YouTube or TikTok video. Develop your own. And that's part of what we try to do at Hackers Rise is to give you the background that you can develop your own, that you can develop your own. And part of that starts with understanding how the device works. And then the second most important part is you're going to need to know some Python, usually, right? And so those are the starting foundations to be able to develop your own exploit. Otherwise, you're always going to be left with somebody else's exploit that is known and therefore is patched. But the truth of the matter is that not everybody patches. You can find these devices. Once again, I'll go back to the Russians. Okay, the Russians had a 4-year-old exploit against Fortinet, and it worked. Right. This is a 3-year-old exploit against the Fortinet firewall VPN device. It's not going to work against all of them, right? But it'll work against some. And it also has to meet certain criteria in terms. It's only against some of the Fortinet devices. But I think it's fair. I think it's fair to pick on Fortinet. I mean, you can just see all of these. But we have seen similar flaws, but not as many with other vendors as well, right? But Fortinet is the worst.
So we also had a lot of pushback, right? Because you said, well, the thumbnail, that a lot of people didn't like the thumbnail about not using a VPN. What's your advice then? No, don't use a VPN at all, because a lot of people say, well, what are you doing in enterprise, right? Because a lot of people have remote workers. How do they get access to this stuff? I know we spoke about layered approach. I mean, but do you have any general advice or advice that you could give people based on this?
Well, let's separate the two types of VPNs. Okay, for those people who are using the consumer level VPNs like the Nord and what have you, all I wanted to do in that case is say, look, be careful, because it's not going to give you anonymity. That's what I want to say. In the enterprise level, don't use Fortinet.
That's your advice. Okay.
Now, I'm going to say that and say that you need to pay very close attention to these devices. Sometimes they get overlooked. And in this case here, if you have a Fortinet device, you might want to think about replacing it. But if you do and you can't replace it, make sure it's patched. I mean, that's always what we can do with any of our devices. So yes, just know, I think mostly the message that I want to leave to enterprise level cybersecurity pros is that don't assume that the VPN is keeping you safe. Okay, don't assume that. And watch it closely, examine it closely, watch the CVEs and the various patches that come out for these devices and make sure it's patched. I have lost faith in Fortinet, but hopefully they bounce back and they put out a whole new device that is impermeable, but I don't think so. But so yeah, but probably the final thing I want to leave the enterprise level folks with is simply be vigilant. Okay, be vigilant. Don't assume that these devices are going to keep you safe.
Great advice. OTW, as always, thanks so much. So for everyone who's watching, give us comments, put comments about the stuff you want me to ask OTW, what you want to see. I know a lot of you have been asking for OTW to come back more often, so hopefully we can do that. Please put in the comments the kind of stuff you want to see, like, what are your questions? OTW, thanks.
Thank you, David. See you again soon.